Okay, so we're getting some great spiritual lessons today. We have one on kindness, and the next one is on mindfulness. Mindfulness. As many of you probably know, if you've watched me on Facebook, I have been here and there and everywhere. I am so blessed. I've been to, let's see, I've been to New York 2 times, in the past, 3 weeks, to New York 2 times, to Cannes, France, to Aix-en-Provence, and then back to New York, and then up to Boston, and then back here. And I'm one of these people who just, I love travel. When I was growing up, I read through all of the Nancy Drew stories. Now, some of you youngsters probably don't know who she is, but she was the daughter of a lawyer, and she was very independent, and she solved all kinds of mysteries. And then along came Cherry Ames. Did anybody read Cherry Ames? Cherry Ames. And Cherry Ames, and all of these, it's like the Hardy Boys. That's what the guys had, Hardy Boys stories, and they read all these different books. And then there was all of the Cherry Ames books, and Cherry Ames started out as a nurse, but then she became a stewardess. And I wanted to be a stewardess. And then later on, my dad, I remember, used to get the the Saturday Review of Literature. It is a magazine that gets sent out to erudite people. And there was always a back section which was job listings, and they were all international. And when I was in high school, I dreamed of, living in Brazil or Taiwan or someplace really exotic. And I think it's really interesting. A lot of times we say, well, my life will be perfect when I get X, Y, and Z. And we picture exactly how it's going to happen, and then we get frustrated because it doesn't seem to be happening, because the conditions that we think we need to have aren't there. And yet here I am. I travel all the time, and I live on Social Security pretty much, and it's just that I get invited to all these wonderful places, and I am so blessed. So my message to you is, don't worry if the trappings or what you think you need to have to make things happen aren't there the way you think they should be there, because if that really is a goal and a dream and who you are, the universe is going to step in. And in totally unexpected ways. And for me, this unexpected way was that I have a daughter that I produced. Mother's Day. There was extra help there too. It wasn't two-way street. But anyway, I produced a wonderful daughter, along with some help. And she's a lawyer, but she also plays the violin and plays in chamber music, quartets, and that sort of thing. And she invited me to come with her to what I would call a consortium, a conference on chamber music. And the way this conference worked was that, I don't know how they arrange this, but they have exactly the right number of cellists, the right number of first violinists, the right number of second violinists, and the right number of violists to create at least, I don't know, it had to be 10 or 12 quartets. There's some quartets that are already preformed who come, and then there's others who are what they call free radicals. And they just mix them up. And every morning you're with a different set of 4 people in the exact, one cellist, 1 first violinist, 1 second violinist, and 1 violist. And they all tackle the very same music. And this year it was Beethoven. More about that later. A little bit more about that later. Before I get into it, I just want to say a little bit of a lesson that I have learned from travel. And it is a lesson that I learned probably even before I really got into metaphysical spirituality. One of the first spiritual people that I really started following was Ram Dass. Does anybody know who Ram Dass is? And Ram Dass, he used to be one of the LSD Harvard professors who got kicked out of Harvard back in the 60s because they were doing all this fun stuff with LSD, which at that point was a fancy drug that wasn't legal. And he left Harvard and went over to India and really became a very holy spiritual person. And the one thing that I just remember that just really was embedded in me was this idea of be here now. Be here now. And I think, you know, when I come back from travel, it's always sort of interesting because everybody says to me, oh, you must be so exhausted. Oh, the jet lag, and you must, how could you? And be here now. You know, the way I look at it is every day we are standing, talking, sitting, walking, sleeping, eating. And we're either doing it here, or we're doing it over there, or we're doing it in another place. It's just in another place. That's all it is. But when we start jumping out of the present moment, thinking, oh, it's 5 o'clock here, it must be midnight over there, and we start stressing ourselves out about all of this conflict and the differences. In fact, I got sort of irritated with my updated Samsung phone that insisted on, every time I looked at it to see what time it was, it insisted in telling me what the time was in St. Louis, which takes you right out of the present moment. So, lesson about that. So that's one of the first observations, just from traveling in general, is, and with life. You know, be here now means to be here now, and if we're not here now, we can't really appreciate all the beauty and all the possibilities of divine presence, of the universe. And usually when we are worried and upset, it's because we are jumping out into another place instead of being here now. So one of the beautiful things about being in the present moment, and I think one of the biggest things that helps us to be in the present moment, is to let go of judgment. In other words, oh, it's midnight here, it should be, oh, over there, it's such and such. Letting go of judgment helps us be in the present moment, and that was the lesson that I took away from this trip. I was sitting on there's a beautiful wharf, not a wharf, but a boardwalk now that goes right through the front of the harbor in Boston. It is absolutely stunning. It was not there when I lived in Boston many years ago. And along came 3 people. It was obviously one guy who was a translator, because he spoke English and Chinese, and a couple who was probably in their 50s, and they were obviously tourists. And the guy was the translator, and I'm not sure whether he was just a tour guide. I think maybe he was a relative. And he saw me and my friend sitting, we were sitting on a bench admiring the view, and he made some comment about what a beautiful day it is, and somehow we start, you know, how would I say, we struck up a conversation. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me to say to the couple through the translator, well, I lived in China when I was a little girl, and I started singing, 我是小白兔, which is a Chinese kindergarten song about a rabbit. And they laughed. So funny. And then from my missionary days, I did not sing them the Baptist song about, oh, the bells of hell ring, ting-a-ling-a-ling. Instead, I told them that I knew the Lord's Prayer. But, you know, the beauty is when you travel and you see people face to face. And like yesterday at the retreat, the most beautiful thing is to look in somebody's eyes. You know, we tend to just sort of skim over everything in our life, and to look into somebody's eyes and really see the person. That was that was probably the most beautiful thing of in addition to all the flowers and all the other things, but that was one of the most beautiful parts of it. We tend to skim the surface nowadays because we are deluged with so much information and so much stuff that it's sort of hard to stop and just look at one thing at a time. When you look at somebody and you just see them for who they are as a human being, it's very hard to think about our government versus your government, and the tariffs and all this kind of stuff. And here is this couple, like, they just came from St. Charles saying to me, "Oh, you have to come and visit us too. You must come back and see so we can show you all around." From China. There was no worries about government or politics or anything like that. And it was the same thing in France, although they sometimes did look at me sort of quizzically like, "What's going on with your country?" Okay, so that was one of the lessons in mindfulness, to be present, to be fully present with someone, all of that judgment falls away. And I think that the key, one of the keys, and this was a lesson that I learned in this trip, part of that is letting go of judgment. And I had the most beautiful experience of this in the trip. So this trip was about music, and everybody was going to be playing a specific piece of music, which was Beethoven. Beethoven's 127th. 127th. I have a very wide variety of musical tastes. I love heavy metal rock and roll, because I love that driving energy. I love Baroque music, because Baroque just Vivaldi and all those people, they just carry you along with them. But Beethoven is just ponderous to me. That's all I can, when somebody says, "Oh, Beethoven," ponderous. That's what I think. And that's my prejudice. That's my prejudice. That's my judgment. Oh, he's ponderous. However, I'm so dying to go to France. I don't care if it's Beethoven. I am not going to turn down an opportunity to be with people who love music. And this is one of the things that helped me. One of the things that helped me is that on these trips, there is a wonderful lady who plans not only all the accommodations and all these rehearsal rooms and all this within one hotel setting, she also plans all of these interesting opportunities for the spouses and the guests of the players to go out and explore different parts of the area, wineries, of course, painting things. Oh, it was wonderful. For myself, though, I only go to one or two of those because I have found a passion for simply sitting in on these rehearsals and listening to the music. That has always been my mode of operation when I'm going to one of these things. And what I discovered is that my judgment about Beethoven, I could sort of set it aside. And because I started, and I think this is one of the interesting things, I'm diverting a little bit here, pardon me, but I think it's important. All of us who are spiritual teachers, whether it's Lena or Annette or Leah or anybody, it's not like we're perfect people leading these perfect spiritual lives. As my dad used to say, you cannot preach about sin unless you've experienced some. And we all have our moments of doubt and our moments of judgment. And then every once in a while something comes along where we say, oh my gosh, I guess I really have learned something. I guess really, wow. And for me, it was this discovery about Beethoven. And here's what I discovered. I was motivated to go on this trip because I love all the people in it. The idea of going to France and seeing old friends and so on and so forth, of course that was a great appeal too. But the music, when you took the opportunity to set aside your judgment and really be with it, was such an experience. And one of the reasons, there was 4 parts to it. First of all, when you set aside judgment, and my judgment about Beethoven was, I never experienced it that much. I haven't listened to Beethoven that much. But when you look at the score, if you've ever seen a music score, and you see there's 4 different lines of millions and millions of notes, and that 4 different people are playing 4 different things, and it all has to come together. It is fascinating, and when you just are willing to go down into the detail of whatever that thing is, it's just like going down and really appreciating a person, and appreciating that even if they're, like Leo was saying earlier today, you know, who knows but when we take the time to go deeper, taking the time to go deeper and look at the score was just amazing. And to see so many little notes, and there's some places where some people are only playing 1 or 2 notes, and there are other measures where people playing what seem like millions of notes. How can they do it, and how can they do it so fast? So one area that helped me let go of judgment was just to get into the details of it. The next thing I noticed was that there's a new trend in doing quartets. Digitalization has come along, and a lot of people, you know, when they're playing in a quartet, not only are they playing, but they've got to turn pages at the same time that they're playing and still all stay together. So now we have iPads, and you all probably, I don't know if you use one or not, because there's very different opinions about it, but the iPad sits on a stand, and then they have a little foot pedal, and they can turn the pages. Not only that, but you can download all of Beethoven's work onto one. And not only that, you can do it either by just your score, that top line, or whatever your particular line of music is that you're following, or you can see all 4 scores at the same time. Yes, that was really interesting to me too. And then there was all the different styles of the coaches, because what happens is these groups are playing together for the whole morning, for 2 hours. The first half hour, they stumble along themselves. And then the coach comes in, and the coach is a professional, a seasoned pro. In many cases, like a solo violinist or cellist, that kind of thing, that have played on the stages in Europe and in the United States. And each one had a completely different approach. One guy was just very jovial, and he was very gentle with everybody, and he sort of looked at the overview of everything, and, well, let's get this a little, if you do a little bit more here, then everybody else will, sort of that kind of coaching. Then another coach was all about the tempo, bam, bam. She even brought in a mechanized metronome, bum, bum, bum. If you all will just stay on track. Stay with the beat. And then we had another coach who was all about the score. Which score is the best? Should you be reading from all 4 parts, or should you just be paying attention to your part and forget about the rest? And of course, there's completely different takes on that. But you know, when you just get into willing to let go of the judgment and just get into all of the details of things, it is amazing. I know that is how I got into heavy metal rock and roll. I let go of my mommy image and just went in and had fun. And I just loved all the lights, and I really would like to be a bass player in another life. I think I will be a bass player in a heavy metal rock band. For sure. That's my favorite. But anyway, letting go of judgment and going deep into the little details, you start to be amazed at all the little parts of it that I had never appreciated about Beethoven. I will never listen to Beethoven again the same way I used to. Just thinking that as partners. And listening to a quartet, let me tell you, every morning I would sit there, I got lots of knitting done. I would sit there and I would hear the most squawky. It would be squawky and people wouldn't be together. And by the afternoon, by noon, when the whole session was over and they had been coached 2 times, everything started coming together. And it was just so beautiful to see and to appreciate. So all of a sudden, I found myself really immersed in music that I didn't think I would like. How wonderful it would be for all of us if the things that we pass judgment on, if we just got immersed a little deeper below the surface and had a greater appreciation for what's behind everything in life. Even the things that we're judgmental about. I think also one of the saddest things in life is to hear of someone feeling lonely and bored. I think that's so sad. There is so much out there. When we're just reacting to life and just saying, now I have to do this, now I have to do that, and so on and so forth, and just losing ourselves in the digital world, we lose the opportunity to see all the beauty and all the possibility. And all we need to do is open our eyes and go deeper into something, anything. Don't just skim along the surface. So, one last little story. When we were at the retreat yesterday, I was walking in the front door or towards the front of the building, and there was this bunch of the most glorious blue, purple blue iris. That I dropped everything, got out my camera because I had to take a picture of it. And everybody noticed this particular, isn't that right? We all noticed this beautiful, they were gorgeous. And behind them were a bunch of stems of a darker color, more of a burgundy colored kind of iris, but they were all closed up. So we all went on. We had the morning, we went to lunch, again stopped and admired these beautiful, all of us saw them. On the way back from lunch, out of the blue, I mean, I've always thought that flowers sort of open slowly, and I thought, slowly they open. This iris in the back that had been was completely open within the space of 40 minutes. We missed it, but it was gorgeous, and it had popped open. It was just an amazing, I
think everybody was just as amazed.
Yeah, we were just amazed. That's what life is up. That's the opportunity of being fully alive. That is the opportunity of letting go of judgment. That's the opportunity to live in mindfulness. We all have possibility. And if we just let go of judgment, we can dive into life so much more deeply. So the spiritual lesson, and I wrote it up because I want to make sure I had a finish to this. We are expressions of the creative and energetic nature of the divine. If we want to live fully with this magnificent possibility, one step we can take is to let go of judgment and live purely in the present moment. Thank you.